One Catholic in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn had a life-changing experience when she went to confession. I'm Tim Hartman, and I'll explain why Reconciliation Monday is so important.
Tensions are rising in Washington. The government could shut down by the end of the week if President Trump and Congress don't come to an agreement. Violent protests as thousands take to the streets in response to Belgium's support for the UN Global Compact on migration. Plus, she starred on Broadway, and now she shares the gift of her voice with parishioners. Tonight, this cantor talks about reaching the faithful through music. All that and more right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. Today is Reconciliation Monday. Catholic churches throughout the Archdiocese of New York and the Diocese of Brooklyn are staying open late so the faithful can receive the sacrament. The day can be an opportunity to experience the power of forgiveness, even for those who haven't been to confession in years. Currents News' Tim Hartman has the story from Bay Ridge.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Parishioners at Our Lady of Angels Church in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn take reconciliation seriously. Kathy Lemon is one of them.
I know I'm a sinner, but I had difficulty this morning trying to think, what will I say when I go to confession?
She says she hesitated entering the confessional for 4 decades, but 2 years ago, she returned to the church to tell her sins to a priest.
I told him everything from day one of my bad life, you might say, until the present. And I absolutely felt like I was Atlas shrugged, took the weight off my shoulders.
Kathy is one of many Catholics participating in Reconciliation Monday. Catholic churches in the Brooklyn Diocese and the Archdiocese of New York opening the confessionals Monday evening, giving sinful Catholics the opportunity to express their harmful acts. This year's theme, Find Peace Through Forgiveness on Reconciliation Monday. Monsignor Kevin Noon is the pastor of Our Lady of Angels. He says Reconciliation Monday sets a tone for the Advent season.
People want to be at peace with God. We're all aware of the fact that we're human and fallible and sinners.
Catholics say exiting the confessional gives them a sense of cleansing.
You feel clean and pure, and you just feel God's grace and love.
We're having company. So what do you do when you're having company? The first thing you think of is clean the house. It's a good way to look at it, that we want to clean up our acts before Jesus comes.
For those who haven't been to confession in some time, Monsignor Noon has some advice.
Calm down, don't be worried. However long it's been, first of all, welcome back.
And if you couldn't make it to church for Reconciliation Monday, you can call your local parish or check a church bulletin to see when they hold confessions. In Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, Tim Hartman, Currents News.
England's top Catholic leader is apologizing for keeping evidence of clerical sex abuse under wraps. Cardinal Vincent Nichols said back in 2002 he was focused on resolving the matter quickly when he chose not to disclose a key document to investigators. That document showed the only accusations ever made against Father John Tolkien back in 1968. The clergyman says he was trying to avoid civil action in court. And the former head of the Minnesota Archdiocese is not allowed to exercise public ministry. An 11-member Archdiocesan Review Board recommended that Archbishop John Neinstadt be restricted until pending allegations against him are resolved. The Archbishop is under investigation after being accused of engaging in sexual misconduct back in 2014. Neinstadt says that he is innocent. Also tonight in Washington, the deadline clock is ticking and the lives of nearly every American could be affected. The threat of a government Christmas-time shutdown is looming, and Natasha Chen reports the very latest from Capitol Hill.
We're doing this in a very friendly manner.
It's been nearly a week since this televised showdown in the Oval Office.
And I am proud, and I'll tell you what.
And the president and Congress are no closer to averting a partial government shutdown.
I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it.
Today, the president tweeted, "Anytime you hear a Democrat saying that you can have good border security without a wall, write them off as just another politician following the party line."
Whenever I hear a president say to the American people at Christmas time, "I am going to shut down your government," it pains me.
If a shutdown happens, it would be limited. That's because Congress has already funded about 3/4 of the federal government through September of next year, including the Pentagon, Department of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Labor. But there are still 7 spending bills that need to be passed by the end of Friday. If they don't, departments like State, Justice, and Homeland Security will go unfunded.
There's absolutely no excuse to shut down government on this issue or any other issue. I have suggested that we revisit a compromise proposal that we brought forth earlier this year.
Democrats have similar proposals, but President Trump has stuck to his $5 billion demand for a border wall. In Washington, Natasha Chen, Currents News.
President Trump is saying he wants to make a deal with Congress about health care. He's reaching out after a federal court ruled Obamacare unconstitutional late Friday. This morning, Trump tweeted, "We have a chance working with Democrats to deliver great health care. If an agreement is not done, the Obamacare is probably headed back to the Supreme Court." Ex-FBI Director James Comey appearing on Capitol Hill today for round 2 with Congress. In a closed-door session, House Republicans intended to grill Comey about inconsistencies in answers he gave earlier this month. Then the questions focused on Russian influence in U.S. elections and Hillary Clinton's email case. According to sources, former Attorney General Loretta Lynch will testify on Wednesday. Thousands marched in Brussels on Sunday to protest the UN pact aimed at fostering cooperation on migration. Many angered over the Belgian government's support of the pact. Atika Schubert has more.
Violent demonstrations erupted in the streets of Brussels on Sunday as thousands of far-right protesters and counter-protesters chanted, waved flags, and ran from tear gas sprayed by police. The demonstrations quickly devolved into chaos when police detained 90 demonstrators after they attempted to storm the European Commission building. The uprising, dubbed March Against Marrakesh, was organized in response to Belgium's support for the UN Global Compact on Migration. The compact has drawn global criticism from these far-right groups who fear an increase in European migration as a result.
Europe is dead because of the politics, because of the European Union and this Commission building that signed this compact contract for the immigration. That means that the European people will be dead in our home. So no, we want our home back.
And in some, it has aggravated a deep-seated hatred towards ethnic groups.
We want all the black out of this country. All Arab, all what is Islam out.
As these far-right groups see restricting migration as a means to preserve their way of life.
It's not only for the Marrakesh, it's also for the people. We need to work until we are 67 years old. It's not normal. And they throw the money for the immigrants who will not serve our country.
Atika Schubert, Berlin.
Pope Francis is a strong supporter of the UN Migration Pact. He's expressing hope that the deal sparks compassion for migrants. In St. Peter's Square on Sunday, he urged nations to show greater responsibility and solidarity toward those who are forced to leave their country. The father of a 7-year-old who died less than 48 hours after U.S. Border Patrol agents detained her is speaking out. The Department of Homeland Security says the girl spent days in the desert without food or water when she, along with her father, joined a large group of migrant refugees at a New Mexico border checkpoint. He says his daughter got sick before they turned themselves into border agents.
I'm not going to speak that much because I can barely take it. It's difficult for us. This happened because we are very much in need. The girl will jump in happiness that she would get to go to the United States, very happy and content, but she didn't know. For us, it's very difficult.
A congressional delegation plans to investigate the girl's death. There's a lot more news headed your way. Wreaths Across America is honoring veterans all across the 50 states, and this weekend they stopped in Brooklyn. How the power of music is uniting Catholics preparing for the birth of Jesus. And an indigenous community living in Panama is joining the rest of the world for a big event next month. Wreaths Across America makes it their mission to remember, honor, and teach about veterans, and the group does that by coordinating wreath-laying ceremonies at over 1,000 cemeteries across the U.S. and abroad. Over the weekend, it was Brooklyn's turn. Currents News' Katie Engesser has that story.
a symbol of the Christmas season and a solemn place.
What they have done for us, they deserve to be honored.
Unlike many visitors to Cypress Hill Cemetery, these girls and boys aren't remembering relatives. In fact, they don't know those buried here. What they do know is that in these graves lie America's heroes.
They risked their lives to give us freedom.
I got it. The students from Holy Angels Catholic Academy in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn are taking part in wreaths across America, showing respect to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice.
Maybe their family can't visit them, so it would be right for us to visit them if they don't have people to visit them.
The thousands of soldiers laid to rest in the Brooklyn Cemetery are from the branches of the U.S. military. Some date back to the Civil War. The many graves are adorned with wreaths.
It's not for the glory, it's not for the notoriety, it's for a chance for us to give back. They gave to us, let's give back to them.
The students helped to place around 2,000 wreaths around Cypress Hill Cemetery, but honoring the veterans has become a school-wide project. For those who couldn't attend today's service, they donated money to help pay for these wreaths.
I think it's a huge sign of respect to put a wreath on a military grave.
Michael Long is the chairman of the board at Holy Angels and introduced the program at the school last year. He wanted the students to take part so they could better understand the sacrifices of veterans.
It was very important because one of the reasons we were able to celebrate Christmas and one of the reasons we were able to sit down with our families and go to church and say our prayers is because people fought and died to keep us free.
Wreaths Across America is honoring veterans in about 1,400 locations in all 50 states this Christmas, with a mission to remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach the next generation the cost of freedom. Certainly for the kids from Holy Angels, many of whom told me their parents and grandparents are veterans, this is a lesson they are learning well.
I would like to have other people celebrating them and putting wreaths on their graves.
In Cypress Hills, Katie Anguser, Currents News.
President Donald Trump also joined in on the Wreaths Across America campaign this year. He made an unscheduled visit to Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia on Saturday to observe the thousands of Christmas wreaths left each year at the military grave sites. The president specifically visited Section 60, where veterans who died in the global war on terror since 2001 are buried. An indigenous community in Panama has decided to step out of the shadows and embrace their roots as they prepare to attend World Youth Day. Now, they're not Catholic, but they want to meet the Pope when he visits early next year. Isabella Sanchez has their story.
Only a 20-minute canoe ride separates this group of people from the rest of the world. This is one of the Embera communities that have populated the territory of Panama for centuries. There are about 80,000 Embera people in the different parts of Latin America. This particular group is made up of 26 families, a total of 84 people who have been living there for 11 years. In a world where climate change is more and more tangible, the Embera want to show that another kind of life is possible. It is a life that is in harmony with nature.
Our coexistence with nature is at risk, so this is our way of transmitting knowledge and respect, not only for indigenous peoples, but also for nature, so that future generations can live our same experience with nature.
For this reason, they also appreciate the speech by Pope Francis in favor of indigenous cultures and how he highlights the important role of these peoples.
For us as indigenous peoples, it is important that a public figure like the Pope endorses and respects indigenous people. Also that he takes into account our rights in our territories. That validation of our right to land and to live in community is what we as indigenous peoples seek.
The Embera community is not shying away from the next World Youth Day, which will take place in Panama in just a few weeks. Dozens of pilgrims have already expressed interest in getting to know them and the community.
We have around 150 pilgrims who have already told us they are visiting.
The Emberas, like many other Panamanians, want to take part in this great event that includes a visit from the Pope. And although Pope Francis' schedule for the visit is already full, they hope he will make time to acknowledge the reality of one of the oldest communities on the continent.
World Youth Day, the global mega event where a huge crowd of young Catholics join together to proclaim their faith, is coming soon. The Pope will be with them in Panama City at the end of January. Paul Jarzembowski is a top official at the U.S. Bishop's Youth and Young Adult Ministries, and he joins us now from Washington. Paul, thank you so much for being with me. You know, strengthening the faith of young people is your biggest job. Now, to that end, you have said in the past that our church family is incomplete. Can you explain that?
Well, across the United States, in fact, across the world, young people are increasingly disengaging from the practice of the faith. So our sons and daughters, our brothers and our sisters are who are in their 20s, who are in their teens, who are in their 30s. All these young people are more and more are disconnecting from the practice of the faith. So our family is incomplete. We seem to have older generations connected to the church, but when it comes to the younger groups, they're not as connected, and so therefore there is a completion that we need to shore up a little bit.
Which means you have a big task ahead of you, Paul. So please give us some perspective. How vital is World Youth Day to the success of your work?
Well, World Youth Day is one of those tentpole events in the life of the Catholic Church. It comes around every so often, and what it does essentially is embolden the missionary disciples, the active young adults, the active young people in their faith, giving them the strength and the tools they need, the motivation they need to go out and be evangelists, to be disciples to their peers. So this, in a way, is a giant recharge moment for especially those who are active in the faith. It makes their connection to the church even deeper, and then ultimately sends them out on mission to their peers.
Paul, I have to ask you this. The clerical sex abuse crisis, it's captured so much attention, as I'm sure you know. As far as you can tell, will that crisis impact turnout at the Youth Day gathering?
At this point, we have not seen any change in the registrations from before or after. Registrations continue to rise, both on the national scene and I know globally. So I'm not aware of any particularly direct impact.
Now, selecting a Central American country for World Youth Day, that's likely to mean a great deal to Hispanic and Latino communities. So can we expect a message to immigrants to come out of this event?
Well, it's not me to figure out what the Holy Father will say, but certainly this moment will draw a lot of attention to Latin America. I mean, this in a way is the first World Youth Day to be held in Central America, and the Latin American cultural reality will be very much present throughout all of World Youth Day.
And when they bring that back home, Paul, what do you hope will be the long-term effects of this event when the week of activities is complete?
But when people come back, we see a renewal of leadership, vocations to priesthood and religious life, vocations to marriage, and then the vocation of being engaged as an active Catholic, in the faith increases. So we see a lot of young people step into leadership roles as a result of this. So for me, what comes of this is, again, another renewal of leadership in our church from the face of the young people.
All right, Paul, thank you so much for being with me. We're going to leave it on that very positive note.
Thank you very much.
We'll have live team coverage of World Youth Day to keep you up to date on the events in Panama with national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, and Currents News, Tim Harfman. Our coverage begins Tuesday, January 22nd at 7 p.m. More than 100 Protestants have been detained in China after being accused of inciting subversion of state power. One of the detainees is Wang Yi, a prominent pastor and legal scholar who once visited President George W. Bush at the White House. Civil rights advocates outside China have condemned the mass arrest as the latest move in China's stepped-up crackdown on religious practice. Still to come on Currents News. The power of music to evangelize. Coming up, from the Broadway stage to the altar, a singer talks about sharing her gift of music with the faithful as a cantor. And happy birthday, Pope Francis, the Holy Father, sharing the occasion with some very special people. And the Bright Christmas campaign needs your help tonight. It's really a great initiative run by the Tablet newspaper, and donations make Christmas a more joyous time for children in need. Write your checks to Bright Christmas and send them to 1712 10th Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11215. And that address is also posted on our website, netny.tv/shows/currentsnews. Bringing the Christmas spirit through the power of song. As we get closer to Christmas across the world, churches are holding their annual Christmas concerts. One of those concerts in a New Jersey church was headlined by one of its cantors, who, by the way, is also a Broadway star. Currents News' Emily Drewby has the story from Hoboken.
It's an Advent tradition. Christmas concerts around the world help to celebrate this important season through the power of music.
Everybody says to me, singing is praying twice.
A tradition carried out at St. Anne's Catholic Church in Hoboken with their 2018 Wintertide concert.
When people do experience it in a different way, as opposed to just hearing it nonchalantly on the radio, it touches people a lot deeper.
Hundreds attended the sold-out event that raised at least $7,000 for local nonprofit Family Promise of Hudson County, which helps to house homeless families. The concert headlined by the church's music director, Jeremy Beck, who has worked with the likes of Missy Elliott and Rebecca Pitcher, a Broadway star who portrayed Christine in The Phantom of the Opera for over 3,000 performances. Both bring their talents to this church, not just for this concert, but every Sunday. On a deeper level, concerts like this one are very important. Father Remo de Salvatore explains they help to spread the Advent message of hope.
We're always trying to share that message with people, and so music is a great way that maybe some people who don't really come to church all the time or whatever would be interested in coming and hearing the message in a different way.
While music in general also helps to fill the pews,
the church has grown in the last 6 years that I've been here, and I do think it has something to do with the music.
And bring parishioners closer to God.
It's all connected, right? And it's all part of us giving our praise and worship to God.
Father de Salvatore adding, you don't have to sound like this for it to count. In Hoboken, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
Today is Pope Francis's 82nd birthday. The Holy Father was presented with an early birthday cake while he visited children at the Santa Marta Medical Dispensary in Rome on yesterday, which of course he shared with the families and staff at the dispensary. A very, very happy birthday to him. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you so much for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.